The noise inside the airplane cabin gradually subsided. Zara stood up, her hand just reaching the latch of the overhead compartment. Suddenly, a strong force shoved her aside, and a rough hand snatched the small blue backpack from her grasp. "Get out of the way, slowpoke," a gruff voice snapped, not even looking at her. The intruder hastily shoved his briefcase into the space he had just seized, leaving Zara stunned with empty hands and a flicker of annoyance rising within her. What just happened? Why did that man behave so rudely? Will Zara speak up for herself? Watch until the end. Inside the airplane cabin, as the noise of passengers gradually subsided in preparation for takeoff, Zara sat near the window, a gentle smile gracing her lips as she gazed outside. A young woman of color, she was looking forward to this flight home to visit her family after enduring a stressful week at work. Zara stood up, intending to stow her small blue backpack in the overhead compartment. Just then, a middle-aged white man with a displeased expression abruptly shoved past her to claim the space above. "Get out of the way, slowpoke," Mr. Davis grumbled, not even glancing at Zara as he spoke. He snatched her backpack and forcefully crammed his own briefcase into the compartment, completely filling it. Zara froze, a look of bewilderment washing over her face. "Excuse me, sir, but I believe there's been a misunderstanding. I had already placed my bag up there," Zara said softly. Mr. Davis turned back, his eyes sweeping over Zara from head to toe with a look of disdain. "You should know your place. Don't waste other people's time." Zara clutched the strap of her backpack tightly, fighting back a tremor. Mr. Davis's words echoed in her mind, leaving a bitter taste. She looked up at him, wanting to defend herself, to reclaim the respect she deserved. But her throat constricted, preventing her from speaking. A few nearby passengers frowned at Mr. Davis's rudeness, yet they remained silent, unwilling to get involved. This indifference amplified Zara's feelings of isolation and loneliness. She wondered if anyone recognized the injustice unfolding. Why was no one speaking up? Was it because Mr. Davis was white, and she was not? These thoughts weighed heavily on Zara, planting seeds of sadness and quiet anger within her. She knew she had done nothing wrong, yet she was subjected to this unkind treatment. Mr. Davis's condescending gaze remained fixed on her, a silent assertion of his superiority and her supposed inferiority. Suddenly, Mr. Davis forcefully nudged Zara's hand that was gripping the backpack strap. The rough shove made her fingers tingle with numbness, and the strap slipped from her grasp, hitting the seat with a small click that drew the attention of a few nearby passengers. Zara startled, nearly dropping her backpack into the aisle. Mr. Davis's rudeness and arrogance, coupled with his previous derogatory remarks, had pushed her beyond her breaking point. A simmering anger flared within Zara, consuming the restraint she had been trying to maintain. "I am simply trying to find space for my luggage," Zara retorted, her voice trembling slightly, but a flicker of determination shone in her eyes. She looked directly at Mr. Davis, no longer avoiding his gaze or appearing timid. "Your space has already been taken. You're slow-witted," Mr. Davis snapped, his voice sharp and condescending. He crossed his arms over his chest, leaning forward with a challenging look that showed no intention of backing down. "Either find another spot, or just stand there until the plane takes off. Don't cause trouble here, bothering other people." Mr. Davis's words were not only unreasonable and blatant but also deeply offensive, deliberately belittling Zara in front of the witnesses. Zara felt a rush of heat to her face, her cheeks burning. She had tried to be patient to avoid any disturbance, but this man's overbearing and openly contemptuous attitude, along with the disappointing silence of those around her, made it impossible for her to remain quiet any longer. A wave of indignation surged through her, compelling her to speak up in her own defense. "I am not causing trouble," Zara said, her voice firming, the earlier timidity gone. Resilience and anger had replaced her initial hesitation. "You were the one who rudely took my space first, without so much as an apology. And now you're speaking disrespectfully and blaming me. I have every right to place my luggage in the overhead compartment above my seat, just like any other passenger on this flight. Right?" Mr. Davis scoffed, a sneering smile twisting his lips with contempt, a glint of amusement in his eyes at Zara's defiance. What right do you think you have here? Look at yourself. His gaze slowly and deliberately scanned Zara from head to toe, his dismissive intent unmistakable, as if evaluating her worth based on her skin color and appearance. People like you had better know your place. Don't try to demand things that don't belong to you. Suddenly, Mr. Davis forcefully nudged Zara's hand that was gripping the backpack strap. What are you still doing there? You're in the way, he hissed, his voice sharp, drawing the attention of a few nearby passengers. Zara startled, nearly dropping her backpack into the aisle. Mr. Davis's rudeness and arrogance had exceeded her limit of endurance. I am simply trying to find space for my luggage, Zara retorted, her voice trembling slightly but still trying to maintain composure. Looking directly into Mr. Davis's eyes. Your space has already been taken by someone else. You're slow-witted, Mr. Davis snapped, crossing his arms over his chest. His eyes filled with challenge. Either find another spot, or just stand there until the plane takes off. Don't cause trouble here. Mr. Davis's words were not only unreasonable but also deeply offensive. Zara felt a rush of heat to her face. She had tried to be patient, but this man's overbearing and openly contemptuous attitude made it impossible for her to remain silent any longer. I am not causing trouble, Zara said, her voice firming, her earlier timidity gone. You were the one who rudely took my space first. And now you're speaking disrespectfully. I have every right to put my luggage in the overhead compartment above my seat. Just like any other passenger. Right? Mr. Davis scoffed, a mocking smile twisting his lips with disdain. What right do you think you have here? Look at yourself. His eyes scanned Zara from head to toe, his dismissive intent clear. People like you had better know their place. The statement struck Zara's self-respect like a slap. A few nearby passengers quietly shook their heads, showing their disapproval of Mr. Davis. Just then, a female flight attendant approached, a hint of impatience on her face. Instead of asking about the situation objectively, her gaze swept over Zara with a look of scrutiny. What's all the commotion about? We're about to take off. Please keep order, the flight attendant said, her tone somewhat weary. Mr. Davis quickly interjected, his voice full of self-importance. Look here, miss, this woman is making a fuss over something trivial. I just wanted to put my luggage away, and she's hindering me and even raising her voice at me. He deliberately twisted the situation, portraying himself as the victim. Zara glared at him, unable to believe his audacity. She was about to explain, but the flight attendant quickly cut her off. The flight attendant, still looking at Zara with a less than friendly expression, said, Ma'am, if it's nothing serious, I suggest you find another place for your luggage and settle into your seat. We don't want to delay the flight over something minor like this. The flight attendant's words felt like a slap in the face to Zara. She felt helpless and abandoned. Clearly, the flight attendant had sided with Mr. Davis without even hearing her side of the story. This injustice made Zara's anger surge. Minor? Zara nearly shouted, her voice trembling with anger. He took my space, said offensive things, and now you're calling it minor? Did you even hear what he said to me? The flight attendant frowned. Ma'am, I don't know what happened before, but right now, I need you to remain quiet and follow instructions. If you continue to cause a disturbance, I will have to report this to the captain. The flight attendant's eyes were cold and firm, showing no intention of listening or resolving the issue fairly. Zara looked around, noticing the curious and somewhat judgmental gazes of other passengers. She felt utterly alone. Helplessness and resentment welled up inside her. The flight attendant smirked, a contemptuous smile briefly flashing across her lips as she looked at Zara. Causing trouble on a plane has consequences. Young lady, you'd better be quiet and sit down before things go too far. This mocking remark added fuel to the fire of Zara's anger. She felt insulted and humiliated, unable to bear it any longer. Zara took a deep breath, trying to remain calm, but her voice was firm as she spoke. I am not the one causing trouble here, Zara said, looking directly into the flight attendant's eyes. He's the one who started everything. And the fact that you're taking his side without even hearing my explanation is completely unfair. Just then, a voice from the rear rang out, clear and firm, cutting through the tense atmosphere that had enveloped the airplane cabin. I witnessed everything from beginning to end. This young woman did absolutely nothing wrong. It was that man who behaved rudely, arrogantly, and used unacceptable, demeaning language. A middle-aged woman, her salt and pepper hair neatly styled in a high bun, slowly rose from her seat a few rows back. Her gaze was steady and filled with indignation as she looked directly at Mr. Davis and the flight attendant. Unfazed by their displeased expressions, several other passengers began to murmur in agreement, nods of support spreading, and one person quickly took out their phone, discreetly recording the entire incident. The flight attendant seemed slightly flustered, a hint of fear flickering across her carefully made-up face. She quickly glanced at Mr. Davis, who appeared extremely uncomfortable, scowling and trying to avoid everyone's gaze. His initial arrogance had completely given way to visible unease, bordering on panic. Beads of sweat dotted his forehead despite the stable temperature inside the cabin. At that moment, the captain's voice came over the intercom, his tone more serious and somewhat colder than usual. "Attention passengers. I have received a detailed report regarding a serious incident occurring in the economy cabin. Disruptive behavior and any form of discrimination, no matter how small, are absolutely not tolerated on any of our airline's flights. Authorized representatives will be there to resolve this situation immediately. We apologize for any inconvenience this may cause." Hearing the captain's firm and decisive announcement, the flight attendant's face turned ashen. She knew this situation had escalated beyond her control and the consequences could be severe. Mr. Davis also displayed utter panic, his overconfidence and contemptuous demeanor from before completely vanishing, replaced by visible worry and anxiety etched on his features. Moments later, a flight purser with a cold, stern expression, accompanied by two tall airport security officers, appeared at the front of the aisle. They quickly made their way to Zara and Mr. Davis. The flight purser asked everyone to remain calm and began listening to Zara's clear, coherent, and distressed account, the resolute and detailed testimony of the middle-aged woman, and the corroboration of several other passengers who had witnessed the events. Simultaneously, they noted the flight attendant's clumsy attempts to cover up the situation, her evasive and contradictory explanations, as well as Mr. Davis's weak denials and opravdany, though futile. The security officers even reviewed the video footage that a passenger had promptly captured on their phone. After gathering all the information and reviewing the irrefutable evidence, including the video, the flight purser made a stern announcement, their voice resonating clearly through the now silent cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, after a thorough review of all aspects of this incident, our airline has decided to take appropriate and severe action against the two individuals directly involved in this disturbance. Mr. Davis, for his rude behavior, racially offensive and demeaning language, arrogant demeanor, disruption of public order on the flight, and significant impact on the experience of other passengers. You are hereby required to leave the aircraft immediately. You will be permanently banned from flying on all flights operated by our airline. And information regarding your behavior will be shared with our partner airlines. Security officers will escort you off the plane and hand you over to the authorities at the airport for further legal action as per regulations." The flight purser turned to the female flight attendant, her gaze icy and filled with disappointment. "As for you, as a member of the flight crew, your failure to follow proper incident handling procedures, your deliberate attempt to cover up wrongdoing, your unprofessional attitude, your lack of support for the affected passenger, and your act of mocking and demeaning her are completely unacceptable and go against the core values of our airline. You are hereby suspended from your duties effective immediately and will face termination of your employment following the final investigation by the airline's disciplinary department." This strict and fair decision received a resounding round of applause from the majority of the passengers. Clapping echoed throughout the airplane cabin, many expressing their strong support for Zara and their outrage at the reprehensible behavior of Mr. Davis and the flight attendant. Zara felt an enormous weight lift from her shoulders, tears welling up in her eyes with emotion and gratitude. She looked at the middle-aged woman who had bravely spoken up, offering her a deep and heartfelt smile of thanks, a radiant smile that broke through the tension and humiliation of the past moments. Justice had finally been served firmly and completely, and the unity and courage of those around her had brought about a deserving outcome, sending a powerful message that discrimination and rudeness would not be tolerated. Mr. Davis's arrogant and discriminatory behavior illustrates the persistent presence of injustice in society. leaving Zara feeling isolated amidst the indifference of many passengers. However, the middle-aged woman's courage shattered the silence, encouraging solidarity among others. The decisive intervention of the captain and the head flight attendant led to the punishment of Mr. Davis and the biased flight attendant. This story serves as a lesson in recognizing and combating injustice, the power of courage, and the necessity of fairness from those in positions of authority, as demonstrated by the eventual actions of the passengers and crew. Don't forget to hit the like button if you found this story meaningful. Leave a comment to share your thoughts, and share this story with your friends to spread kindness and the spirit of fighting for what's right in life together.